LifeWave, because you get a ripple and then that hits into another person. So we have another wave to share with you. Hi, how are you? It's so
Oh,
nice to meet
I'm
you.
doing very well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good. So, how long have you been wearing the LifeWave patches?
Well, I was introduced to the patches by Linda Palmer. So back in February of 24, but it was where Dean started the first part of February. She didn't catch me and my wife until the end of February.
Hmm.
So since February of 24.
Okay. And where do you live actually?
Well, I live in Claremore, Oklahoma.
In Oklahoma. Okay, that's great
Hmm.
to know.
Yeah.
So you started the patch and you probably watched a couple of videos and said, yeah, I think I'll roll the dice. And tell us a
Uh,
little bit about your health journey and what it was you were hoping for with the patches, and then what exactly did happen.
okay. Well, I was actually Linda caught up with my wife at a point, when she was out working and visiting, and then I think the next day we ended up going over to Linda's house, and she began telling us more about what goes on, about the plan itself as well as the product, and I began doing, like a lot of folks, been doing lots of research, so going to YouTube, going to Facebook, and looking at the videos and saying, hey, this is great. This is amazing, especially if it works and if it does work in the process. So we got started. Just basically, we signed up that day when we were sitting there in her house and got started on the patches immediately. Uh, what I was hoping for was just better health. Looking at that, it was a situation of, as I was looking at it, it was like, okay, here I am. Here's how I feel. Let's make sure all my affairs are in order. Let's make sure that,
Oh,
my kids don't have to worry about anything. So, thinking like that, because I'm not quite as old as Dean. I'm only 74, so a little bit below that process. So anyway, I began using the patches, and about a week later, one of my grandsons said, hey, Papa, chase me. And I began chasing him around the living room, and I hadn't jogged in years. So that created a new and fun scenario of I haven't used these muscles in years. So so the muscles begin to hurt and begin to ache, that kind of thing. But I had more energy. I was sleeping better. Uh, my overall health, I was just feeling better in the process with that. So those were, kind of the visible effects that I was having and working with. Didn't have any particular goal in mind because it was just a matter of, okay, these work, these help, let's begin trying to share this with other people in the process and seeing what we can do with it. And then had an experience that happened that made me go back and take a look even more, because I've had heart issues since, well, 2012. I had my first heart attack and ended up with 3 stents being put in the process. Began being on all the drugs and the information that the doctors are trying to put on, working with that. And so it's just going along. About 9 years later, though, I had another heart attack in that process. Uh, and so what I saw is that, there's your heart, how strong is it? Now we had, in part of the presentations that we see, it shows that within 6 months your heart's going to begin reversing in age. Well, you can't feel that, you can't see that, so how do you know if it's happening or not in the process? And so anyway, over the last 14 years, then I've had other incidents. I've had another, two major heart attacks, and then just episodes is what I call them, basically, in that process. And so I now have 9 stents. So I'm
Wow.
fortunate that my health and my heart allows me to get the stents and not have to do bypasses and those type of things. And so as we begin looking at this, I had to go back and look, and this is, the ejection fraction to put up on the screen. This is how strong your heart is squeezing, as you're looking with that, working with it. And back so it was like in 2012, I had my first heart attack. In 2021, I had another incident, and my normal function at that point was at 58%. Well, about a year later, there was another episode, and it dropped down to 40%. So in 2022, that fraction was at 40%, and I was going ahead living life as normal. It really didn't seem to affect me or slow me down that much. So again, couldn't feel anything going on, but had another episode, and my function dropped to 40%. So now I'm down in the bottom of the low function. And then the next time it was done in 2023, it was down to 35 to 40%. So it's getting down to possible heart failure. And a year later, it came up in the beginning of February of 24. It was still at 35 to 40%. Well, as I said, started patches, started X39 and actually X49 along in the process. And in February, at the end of February, so really in March, and then I had a incident towards in November of 24, November of last year. And then we went in, and I had to, got everything tested, and my ejection fraction has risen. It's now 60 to 64%. So it's back to normal. And maybe
That's a miracle, honestly and truly. You must be like so excited. I think Chris has the other heart improvements. So here's you might want to take a picture of this, whether you're a guest or a partner. Um, so this is the timeline of what happened in 2012. Uh, so NSTEMI, explain that to us.
non-STEMI, basically it's, I had to go look it up myself. You know, it's basically it's a heart attack.
A heart attack. So he had a heart
Yeah.
attack in 12, a heart attack in 21, and then your LVEF. Explain what that acronym
That's
is.
that's the left ventricle ejection fraction. That's what they measure on how strong your heart is. How much blood is it forcing out, and then to let that come back in.
So after you had your heart attack, it still was functioning, but at the low end of normal because it's
Yes,
55 to 70. But then a year later, if you can move your little cursor, Chris, you're down to 40. So
right.
1 year after your heart attack, you were down in low function. At the end of that, well, then it says you put the 9 stents in.
I did that. I've had a couple of episodes where they weren't really heart attacks, but they were enough. They had some pain, so
Yep.
I went in, and they ended up putting in more stents over that time, so that by 23, I had actually had 9 stents put in, are in my heart right now. So I have
You know
new
what is so like
I have new
providential
plumbing.
is, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you saying?
I said, well, I have new plumbing.
You have new plumbing. Okay. What's so amazing is if you can look at these dates, folks, Terry got involved in LifeWave in 9 of 22. In 23, right here, we had been involved since February, March, April, May. So we knew about it for 3 months by the time he was having his 9 stints put in. And it took almost a year for the news to get to him. And what I have to say is this: don't wait to use your mouthpiece to tell a friend who can tell a friend, because Linda, it had to go to Linda in order to go to Jerry. And look, I mean, I don't think you could have taken another year. You were at 35, 35. So I think that divine providence was really working that wave, the ripple effect was happening. And so now, a year later, after the X39 came into your life in February of 24, we had already been in a year. Yep, she didn't sit on it. She had just found out about it. And now we're talking November of 24, your numbers are up to normal and better than
Normal.
normal. So this is
Absolutely.
like so amazing. It's truly Tammy's going like this, and Linda's
Yeah.
going, yay. And kudos to you, Linda, for having enough belief and courage. And everything about Linda's so beautiful. I mean, she's just the woman who is kind and gracious and lots of prayer. She is on a mission, and you could see it right here. So I think it's fantastic. So, Jerry, did you want to have the final word?
Well, just the final word from that thought of saying, okay, let's make sure I've got a trust in place, our affairs in order, all those type of things. Or now I don't think about those things at all. They've been done, but really it's a new lease on life. I really do feel 10 to 15 years younger with what I'm able to do now as what I was able to do before. It's just fantastic.
Can you
Definitely
repeat that one more time? Well, how did you say how you felt? It was a new what?
a new lease on life.
Amen, brother.
Absolutely. And it's a matter too, you don't feel it. You don't feel it happening. It just is happening. And I'm along the lines with Dean. It's like, well, when are you going to stop? It says, I'm not. Why would I? Let's keep it going. I had somebody I was talking to that said, look, I've had new stem cells put into my body. All I could think of was, yeah, but those are going to die and go dormant just like the ones you had before, unless you do
Right.
something about it. And that's where this comes into play to be able to make a difference, to
That's
make a
great.
difference
So
in
if you are
people's
just,
lives.
thank you so much for sharing your story, Jerry. And if you're just joining us, I saw a few people hop on. Maybe they didn't have the right time. I want to encourage you. I'm going to summarize here. We had two guests, not three, because we went a little over. We had Dean talking about his bone healing, and we showed pictures. You're going to want to watch the recording. He also told about his neuropathy and how he got off of some medications. He also talked a little bit about his was a bone neuropathy, his varicose veins, because Linda was going, honey, don't put your shorts on. And now he's a man walking in shorts, believe it or not. And then, of course, we had Jerry talk about his heart and the heart attacks he had, the stents he had put in, and his injection fraction went from 35 to 60. So that's the summary. And I want to encourage you, if you're a guest and you're listening to this, tomorrow night, we actually have a call that is done by the This Is It team, where if this was enough to whet your appetite in understanding actually what the patch does, tomorrow night, we're going to talk a little bit more about the company, David, the team, and how you might be able to help and be a part of this. So on that note, I'm going to sign off. God bless you. I'm doing another call, that's right, in 15 minutes. The call after this one is going to be about the man behind the patch. So we learned about the patch. We see what it's doing. Now let's find out what was the action behind it and what it took to really bring this patch to market and have it have these kinds of effects. And that's some kind of vision. And that's at 8:15. So we're going to close out this call, and it's going to be recorded, and it's going to be placed in our LifeWave Champions Facebook group. Mind you, every one of these testimonials are people that are directly related to Terry Beatley, Cynthia Sauer, Joseph Pack. I mean, all the people that are in this group. It's not something at large in LifeWave from other people. It is Terry's team. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. So on that note, I'm going to sign off. Same link, yes, for everybody. For the next call, it is the same exact link. You're welcome, Tammy, and goodbye. I love you all. Join us again next week.